This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose Podcast, where it is our privilege to show up in your living room, in your office, in the car, on the treadmill, wherever it is you're listening to us, and to bring you stories that maybe put a little smile on your face, put a little pep in your step, and get you moving in the right direction. And this week I'm excited. I can't remember if it's the second or third time I've had a pair of guests on the same show, but we're going to have two guests today, Alicia Rose and Gwendolyn Jasmine, who co-wrote and did the artwork for a book called The Canvas of Life, in which they combined poetry and art to share stories that evoke emotion and reflectiveness in their listeners. And, you know, it was super cool to hear from them, to learn about their story. And I'm excited to bring the story behind their story to life with you, and to help you understand that even the people that do accomplish things get there because they had to face fears, they had to overcome doubts. And as Gwen says in this episode, for one of the first times in her life, she had to put herself first and show up for herself in order to help others. So I'm excited for you to sit back and listen to this week's conversation with Alicia Rose and Gwendolyn Jasmine. And I ask that before you do, you pay your bill with us a little bit and help us out by liking, subscribing, and sharing the podcast on whatever platforms you listen, all the major podcast apps or YouTube. And consider joining us on Patreon, where for as little as $2 a month, your financial contributions helps us remain an independent podcast and continue to grow and develop our community around the world. So pay your bill, get back here, and listen to this week's conversation with Alicia Rose and Gwendolyn Jasmine. Alicia and Gwen, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast. It's a privilege to have the two of you on the show. I think this is maybe only the second time in 6 years I've had two guests at once. It's like a bonus episode.
Oh, neat. That's awesome. We're lucky.
Yeah, I'm excited when I got your guys' email. One, I thank you for reaching out. Like, that takes such courage that a lot of people don't even do. Like, we're like talking off the air, we're kind of humble by nature, which is a great trait to have, but sometimes it gets in the way of us talking about what we need to talk about. That's your book and the talent you two have. So thank you for having the courage to actually email so that we could reach you and get you on the show.
Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here and talk about the book.
Yeah.
Get on more
journey to get there.
podcasts.
What's that, Gwen?
It's we're starting to do more podcasts, so we're excited to talk about it on your podcast. Yeah.
What's been your favorite experience of going on a podcast so far?
The feeling afterwards. It's just so wonderful to be able to, well, for one, this is very new for us, so it's a bit nerve-wracking sometimes, but the feeling afterwards, we were able to share something that's very important to us and to talk about something that took like 4 years for us to do and to create. We didn't start this book with the intention of publishing. It was a very organic experience. It was very collaborative. We wanted to do a little bit of poetry, do some painting. We were in lockdown during 2020 when we started. So we really wanted a bit of a refuge, something fun, something creative, something different than being in front of a screen all the time. Because I was teaching pretty much all day in front of a screen on the computer, preparing online classes. It was exhausting. So just to do something different, we started to collaborate, and then it just became one painting, one poem, and then it just kind of evolved very quickly.
Very
And
nice.
so, yeah, so that's the fun part. Like when you're done, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That was actually wonderful.
Yeah, it wasn't so intimidating.
Yeah,
And the
it's
people we meet too, because we would never meet, like you were saying before, we would never get to meet someone like yourself, people from all over the world. It's just so nice to connect with people who have similar passions and trying to find purpose in what they do. So
yeah,
that's really cool for us.
for sure. So Gwen, you're a teacher by trade, and Alicia, I
Yes.
love that I read this that you are a self-taught artist who takes risk and loves to paint.
Hmm.
What kind of risks
Um,
do you love to take?
oh, I like to challenge myself. So someone be like, "Are you able to paint a mural on this?" I'll give her a shot. Sure, I've never done one. Or I've actually had like some cop shops and prisons be like, "Can you make a challenge coin for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's try it. Let's do it." I've never done a challenge coin before, but sure. And I've been doing like things like that, and I like color. I'm very big on using color in my painting, so it can be a bit of a risk to make it so much color, you know, um, so vibrant. But that's how I see the world. I see it very colorful and vibrant. So
Mm.
yeah, I
Uh,
like to put that into my art.
yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic way to look at the world, right? And it's a very, I would say, counter way to look at what kind of information we get a lot of times, where the world seems like it's all doom and gloom and very gray. To see that color, and I applaud you both for not only seeing the color in your world, but to see it in each other to where you want to team up and create something that can inspire and help other people find color in their days.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really beautiful to be able to collaborate with someone. I think it brings out the best work personally for me because it champions me to do my best, and Alicia's always trying to do her best, and we encourage each other and bring out the best in each other. And I think that's just a beautiful way to collaborate through friendship because it really pushes you to do things that perhaps you wouldn't, especially for me, writing poetry that, I never intended to publish, but to have a friend to say, this is worth sharing, and vice versa to Alicia, your paintings are worth sharing. So it's kind of like we're both pushing each other, but also championing each other and trying to do what's best, but also bringing out the best in each other and seeking out other people's stories so that we can be respectful and honest and truthful in our storytelling. And it's just wonderful to have that partner to do it with. Yeah. That checks your integrity also. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so much more fun when we do things together versus creating something all by ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah, me
Uh,
too. I really liked being able to work with Gwen on this, and it's something I wouldn't have done on my own. I wouldn't have published my own art or shown anyone. It's always been very local. I've never shown anyone else outside of our small town because it's intimidating to show it off to the world. And she pushed me to actually take a chance and show other people my artwork. So
All right.
open to critique, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a hard hurdle to overcome, right? And life is putting something out there, especially I think today's world where people can be really, really mean really, really quickly. It's a big hurdle to
Hmm.
be like, hey, I'm gonna put this out there and just see. I remember I wrote my book and I had it done, and I bet I probably sat for, I don't know, a good 20 minutes before I hit send to send it off, right? Because I was just like, I don't know, like what if I write, like, what if I'm the guy that actually writes the worst book in the world? What if I win that? Like, they're like, wow, we finally found the worst book in the world, right?
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely.
but once you get it out there, you realize like there's so many more people that identify with you and want to support you that it makes it all worthwhile.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
does.
And the authenticity behind it, I'm proud of what we've done. It's an authentic version of ourselves and other people's stories. And this isn't about people. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you're open to the poetry, if it resonates with you, if it moves you in a certain way, evokes emotion, that's wonderful. But if it's not for you, that's fine. I think we live in a world where people have to share an opinion because they think their opinion matters. It does to a point, but sometimes it doesn't. If you don't like something, that's fine. If
Yeah,
it
just don't
serves
say
you,
anything.
great. Because not everything is for everyone.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. When you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself, talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to get away from that. There's variety out there. There's different books. There's a bunch of different styles of art for a reason, right? It speaks differently to different people. And poetry is not for everybody, right? Some people love it. Some people are perplexed by it. I know when I was younger, poetry was very perplexing to me. I struggled with interpreting it. And that's why I wanted to do this book a little different, was I wanted to have some imagery to help with the storytelling and the poetry, to help with interpretation, to help with the story and the evoking of the emotion. So I was hoping to create a journey for the reader that is more transparent.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, you get multiple senses involved, right? Because now I'm reading and I'm putting the picture of the words together, but just you're also giving me a visualization that goes with the words. So now it's not just me creating my own picture, which I think is so, yeah, that's a great concept. When I read, the email you guys sent about poetry and art, I was like, oh, I definitely want to understand this story more because it's super intriguing to me, and I think it's a great way for adults to learn and to impact others. Is give them something to read and something to see at the same time, right? All right, but before I get into how you guys met, I want to know a little bit more about all that. I got to warm you up. I like to have a little warm up session, a little quick few questions
All
for
right.
you before we get going. Are you two ready to get warmed up?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, let's start with Alicia. I'm going to hit you with the first one, Alicia. Sunrise or sunset? What are you picking?
Sunset.
Why is that?
I find the sunset where I live is so beautiful. It's like the beautiful orange hues, and it's a very calm ending to a day. So no matter what kind of day you had, it's something you could just sit back at the end of the day and enjoy and relax. And I like the sunset.
All right.
Yeah.
Gwen, favorite book?
My favorite book. Well, I have many, but the one that comes to mind is Night by Elie Wiesel. I remember reading that book when I was very young. It's like less than 100 pages, but it was the most moving book I've ever read. It's he survives the Holocaust and tells his story. And it was the first book that inspired me and that showed me that telling your story can change the world. It really can. I believe he won a Nobel Peace Prize for it. Um, and and I think what's really inspired me with that book was it's such a short book, but it's full of impact. And it's my favorite book.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. And it's crazy how important our story is to share, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
a lot of times we diminish our own story, right? Because we compare it to everybody else's story. We're like, oh, my story's not as good as theirs, so I'll just keep it to myself. Yet there's somebody in the world that's going to learn from everybody's story, but they can only possibly learn it if we share it.
that's right. Yeah.
All right. Alicia, what song are you playing on repeat right now? What music are you listening to?
Oh no. Um, I'm very scatterbrained with my music, so right now, uh, has to be the entire I Prevail album, True Power. It's very emotional. It's very, you can tell they were going through a lot when they wrote it, and it I think it really fits for anyone who's going through a hard time or just wants to feel strength within themselves. I don't know. I really like that.
Okay. And
So
it's
I Prevail.
what is I Prevail the name of the album or the group?
The group. The album is True Power. But it's actually a band.
Okay.
So I'm a big yeah.
All right.
So
I'll have
that's
to
kind
look.
of on repeat for me.
Love it. All right, Gwen, what is a quote that stuck with you throughout your life?
Be the change you want to see in the world by Gandhi. As a teacher, I've always tried to show up for people and live a life through service, through teaching. And I truly believe that if you are going to create any sort of change, have any impact, it starts with you. The little things matter. How you conduct yourself in the world, how you walk through the world, how you show up for yourself and for people. It doesn't have to be these grand gestures. It's just the small things of showing up with kindness. So if you want this change, it starts with you. So
Mm,
that's something that I've always lived by. Yeah.
that's a good one for sure. All right, you're both going to get to the last question. I'll start with Gwen. We'll throw off the rotation. We'll keep Alicia on her toes over there a
Okay.
little bit. All right, Gwen, you get to have dinner with one person. They could still be with us or may have passed. Who would you have dinner with and what would you want to ask them?
I would love to have dinner with my grandfather on my mother's side. I never met him. He passed away before I was born. I'd like to ask him a lot of questions about his indigenous background. My grandfather is Yaqui, Mexican Yaqui, and I would like to just learn more about his roots, his heritage, growing up. A lot of that language and cultural traditions were lost. Like in a lot of indigenous tribes, they're lost because they're not carried through. And I'd just like to ask him a lot of questions about the teachings. I'd like to learn more about the teachings. Yeah, and what he learned from his elders.
Very nice. Alicia?
Um, I had time to think and everything, and I still don't know. There's so many people that you can think of. Um, for me, I would probably say uh my grandparents. I lost both of them. Like I did get to spend time with them. They lived to a really good age, but they had so much experience and I was so young and I didn't know to ask, you know. He was part of the war. He fought in the wars and there's so much history there with them and I was too young to really, you know, care or bother to ask them. And now that I'm older, it's something I wish I would have gotten the chance to speak with them on. about their history and their life before, you know. But
Yeah,
yeah, probably them.
that's good. And Alicia, now I know not to give you time to think. I just gotta put you on the spot right away.
Yeah.
You're a
Okay.
creative.
Good.
You want the
Yeah.
pressure of having to come up with it on the moment. You don't want time to prepare.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a little scatterbrained, so if you give me the quick questions, I can probably get to them easier.
All right, how you two feeling? We warmed up? Feeling
Yep.
Yeah,
good?
for sure.
Excellent. All right, so your book is called The Canvas of Life, and it's super awesome. A combination of poetry with art, and the two of you came together to share that with the world. So I want to know, what was it that you saw in each other that was said, "Hey, I want to collaborate with this person"?
Um,
Creativity for me. Alicia's so creative. So I was like, please come on board. And we've been friends for a long time, Jerrod, since we were kids. So it was one of those things where there's vulnerability for me in the writing. And Alicia is someone that I can truly trust. You know, a good place to start is sharing with someone who you trust and have a deep connection with through friendship. And so that's how I reached out to her initially was, hey, you want to do this with me? Because you're probably the only person I would really share this with other than my close friends and sisters, right? So that's how it started for me.
So did you reach out first, Gwen?
Yeah, I did. It was my idea. I've always been creative, dabbling in different things. So I thought, hey, Alicia, like, what if you painted a picture that tells the story of this poem? We started with the poem Untethered, and we started bouncing ideas back and forth. The poem is about, for me, when I wrote it, because this is a personal poem, it's about leaving a toxic relationship, leaving the darkness, kind of just like untethering yourself and just like letting go. And so Alicia thought of painting an astronaut and with the tether behind the
Mm.
astronaut.
Yeah, like a
And so
spacewalk.
yeah, so we were bouncing ideas off each other, and then it just started to really stimulate our creativity, and I started to get this like little natural high creating with her, and so that was really fun, especially when you're collaborating with someone who's just as passionate as you are about doing something different, sharing something new. That was really awesome, and uh, we're very much alike as well. We both have flighty brains, which is a pro and a con because sometimes you don't land on something, right? But I think we complement each other. We're very understanding of each other's style, and she understands when I talk about something and go off on a tangent, and I totally get her when she changes her mind a million times. So we were definitely a good a good duo in that sense where we trust each other. I think that's the foundation for me.
What do you remember feeling, Alicia, when Gwen gave you that call?
Um, I was excited because, it was during COVID and I was quite bored at home at that point in time. And she's like, would you like to draw this, think of something for me and get back to me? I have this really personal poem and I'd really like to have some artwork attached to it. So I was really excited because it gave me a chance to really try something and go from just words and create something, some imagery from it. And that was really an exciting challenge for me. So I was definitely up for it. And at the time, there was no pressure because it was just for her. It was just a private thing. It was just
That's so true.
try it out and have some fun. So yeah, it was just very exciting first.
Did you, let me know about that process. Did you take the poem and read it and then come up with ideas, or did Gwen just give you like the topic of the poem and you came up with the imagery without knowing the exact words? How'd you do that?
So the reason why I actually went with an astronaut is because I read the poem and I interpreted it differently than how she wrote it.
Mm.
So it was like, I'm untethered from what I'm leaving behind, and I'm moving myself forward into the unknown. And so I drew him like going into this galaxy in his visor. You could see him going into the galaxy. So it's scary to go up into this new unknown, but it's beautiful. So I drew it as something like, oh, I'm scared to leave something behind, but I'm going into something better for myself. And that's kind of how I took the poem. I didn't know what it was about at
Mm-hmm.
first. Yeah, that's how we came up with that.
And what was your reaction, Gwen, to see that Alicia caught a totally different meaning off the words?
I think it's important that you give people the space and the opportunity to come up with their own interpretations.
Yeah.
Poetry is personal, and I don't want to dictate what people feel or what the meaning that is interpreted through it. So I thought it was really neat because I thought it was clear, but that's okay how she interpreted it. She thought she was the astronauts leaving something beautiful behind and going into something even better, but she was halfway there. The astronaut was not afraid to leave anything behind. It was like, I need to get out of the void and out of the darkness. And if I have to cut myself free and float into the darkness, it was more about that poem was about surrender, letting go and not having anything hold you back, because what's holding you back is ultimately going to destroy you. So it was about surrender, like cutting it off, and she didn't necessarily interpret it that way, but that's okay because the visual of the astronaut still speaks to me of letting go. And I love it because you do see the galaxy in the visor and you do see the astronaut floating away to something even more beautiful. The potential is out there.
So let me ask you this then. Either one of you can go first. Here's the question I want to know. How did you practice respecting the other's opinion in the process, right? Because I could see that being an issue. You get two creatives in the room and one person sees it going one way and the one sees it another, and that could be friction. So how did you to handle the respect to, hey, whatever we come up with is going to be right no matter what?
I think it was once we started getting into it and doing more poems, and it also wasn't just about us anymore. We were telling other people's stories. It became more of us mutually talking to each other. So coming up, she would have ideas for the poetry, I'd have ideas for the art. It was more of a mutual, let's work together and come up with ideas and key points to kind of tell this person's story respectfully. So after that, it was pretty smooth sailing, I think. If anything, it would help because Gwen would say trigger words for me and it'd be like, hey, I can make a painting out of that. That's something I could use for me. And then I would say something and she's like, oh yeah, I could add that into the poem, add an extra line in there. And so I think it worked really well having both of us feed off of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And our approach is always very conversational. We wouldn't call each other with, let's talk about this poem, let's talk about this painting. It was really about, it bounced back and forth. We talk about one poem, talk about a different painting. And I think that's what really made it honest, was we didn't have a set agenda of what we were going to talk about. It was very conversational. We approached it openly. And it was very much of, what if we tried this? What if I did this? When I write this, this is what I think. What do you think? So it was really, really neat because we were so open to sharing ideas, but never did we, and truthfully, Jerrod, we never argued about anything. It was very, we never did, Halish. We're always like, hey.
Again, too scatterbrained to argue. I just changed topic. And now we're talking about this all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. And
yeah.
if we ever found a place where we were, there was some tension, we would just say, you know what, let's let that one go and come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way to resolve conflict, is sometimes to just kind of let it be for a moment, sit with it, think about it, and then come back to it together. Because our goal is always to resolve, like Alicia was saying, is some of these poems and paintings were about other people, and our intention was always to do best and give this poem justice and tell people's stories respectfully. So our goal was aligned, and I think that's what really kept us grounded in our collaboration.
Yeah. And I always found I argued more with myself than I did with Gwen. And Gwen
That's
was
very
the one
true.
that, yeah, Gwen was the one that would bring me back. Like, I drew this and I hated it. And I painted completely over it because I'm starting over and it's stupid. And she's like, no, Alicia, keep working on that. You're almost there. You can do it. Or she was very
Actually, that's
positive
100% true.
with me
Yeah,
changing
Alicia
my
argued
mind
with
quite
herself.
frequently. Yeah.
She'd argue with her canvas, her paints. That's very true. Yeah, that's actually 100% accurate. And I would do the same. I would tell Alicia, I'm just swirling in this poem, just swirling. And she would always just encourage me to just maybe put it aside, give me an idea. So yeah, we definitely helped each other through those internal conflicts.
Yeah.
What was,
Thank you, Alicia.
yeah, for sure. It's I think that's what you talk about having that teamwork, right? Is you have the ability to bounce ideas off each other. You have the ability to hold each other accountable, to be honest with one another, and to see things through, right? Because I think a lot of times we have these dreams, but because nobody else knows about it, it's easy to put it on the back burner and just let it sit for another day, another week, another year. And then that becomes 10 years and
Mhm.
20 years. And then at the end of our life, we're like, dang, I had this dream that never took fruition. But what I love about your team is by going working together, like you made sure things got done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Because I was also showing up for Alicia. I
mm-hmm.
was doing this for me, but I was also showing up for my friend. And I'm someone, Jerrod, I show, I'm guilty of this. I sometimes show up for others more than I do for myself. And through this process, and this is something that I've shared with people, and this is why this book is so meaningful to me, is I continue to do what I love to do, which is show up for other people. But for once, I get to do something for Gwen, show up for myself.
Mhm.
And what is that feeling, Gwen, knowing you showed up for yourself? How does that make you feel?
Full circle. I feel sometimes that we put ourselves out there, especially of people of service, whether you are a nurse, a teacher, a healthcare professional, you know, we get lost in this giving, this life of service. But the truth is that you can't pour from an empty cup. Your cup has to be full. And to show up for myself has shown me the importance of self-worthiness and self-esteem and showing up for yourself, because if you show up for yourself first, you can show up for everybody else in bigger and better ways. And so I'm really, really glad that I got there, because I feel sometimes people cycle through life feeling very empty. They cycle through life going through a lot of motion, and then there's a lot of disconnect, with the people they love. But I think what often really happens is people disconnect with themselves,
Mm.
right? Because to love another person fully, you have to truly love yourself, right? And I think it starts with that. And the way it makes me feel like I love this version of Gwen, and I'm going to keep nurturing it, because it makes me feel like I have so much more to give, because my life will always be a life of service as well.
Well, yeah, and it's you two have created something that lives beyond your physical years.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Think about that. Like people you'll never met after you're gone could still come across your poetry, your paintings, and be moved to maybe do something better in their life. So maybe make the world a little better in their
Mhm.
little circle, which can't happen until you two find the courage to make this project.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Yeah. I have a poem in the book called Courage. And it was one of the first poems that I wrote for this book. And I think I wrote it almost for everybody, trying to find the courage to be their authentic self and to have vulnerability. Because to do something that is vulnerable, to take a risk, takes courage. And, you know, that's something that I think I've struggled with throughout my life. It's always, I'm an overthinker. I always have to think about decisions, make sure I'm making the right decision. What is the pro? What is the con? Right. And I think that sometimes we need those lessons and those moments where we delve into the feeling of courage. And even if we don't have it fully, fake it till you make it, because I truly believe that, you know, you can face it and you will get there. You know, we can get there. And we don't need validation from others. We just need the courage to take that leap and take that validation for ourselves. So through this process, I've learned a lot about that courage. And that was one of the first poems I wrote. So I'm really proud of incorporating the experience in the book.
Mm. And sometimes we need just a good friend to come along the journey with, right? Because there's still going to be moments of doubts and insecurities. And when we have somebody to do it with, there's strength in numbers there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Even just like one other person makes a huge difference. You know, just one other person. I think culturally we're so obsessed with numbers, you know, how many followers, how many influencers, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think the power is always in numbers, it's in quality. Who are the people who are truly there for you? And it literally can be just one person.
And on the flip side, who are you really there for?
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because that's the meaning of it. That's the depth of the relationship. You're 100% right. You can have hundreds of thousands of followers and zero friends that you can trust to drop everything and come over right now if you're in a situation, right? Or you can have very few followers, but you have a couple of legit friends that will put their paintings out for public inspection to be part of a book with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
And spend
Alicia,
hours painting them, hours painting too. She puts so much of her time into this, and I truly just admire her creativity because she's so humble about the risks she takes. There's a painting in this book, a self-portrait, where under different light, the emotion on the person's face, on their face, changes. So if you put
wow.
the portrait under blue light, it shows a different emotion. Red light, it evokes a different emotion. How she came up with that, like she was literally in a room, like holding different lights and painting at the same time. It's almost like she goes a little nutty when she's in the process of
A little
creation.
bit.
And I just admire that about her so much, is that she just goes, she delves in 100%. And it's so neat to see the stuff she comes up with.
Alicia, what would you
I would have
say?
never thought of.
No, go. Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? People can be creatives in different realms. Like you can write poetry and stuff, but you don't necessarily see the ability to paint like she does. And like I'm creative in certain ways, but I can't. My wife will get those little squares of paint when we're remodeling houses and stuff. She'll put them all over the wall. And she'll be like, "What color do you like best in this giant room?" And my brain, like, I cannot understand for the life of me how I'm supposed to pick that little color and forecast it all around the room, right? But she could see it and I can't. But it is sometimes the strength of opposites that's fun to surround ourselves with because you
It's
get to
very true.
you grow a little bit, right? Like if you and I agree on everything all the time, like, we're not growing in our time together. We may enjoy our time together. There's no confrontation, but we already agree.
Yeah. There's no challenge to it.
And there's no fun. Like
Yeah.
the fun is in the difference usually.
Yeah.
So Alicia, what
Yeah. And
was
even the
oh,
themes,
go ahead, Gwen. Sorry.
well, sorry, just the difference, just for me, just even the themes that she brought to me, have you thought about writing a poem about the donation journey? And I would have never written a poem about that, but it was very meaningful to her. It's her life experience through people she knows and that are dear and close to her heart. That you're right, Jerrod, that difference, that, that experience is not mine, but she brought it to me and also gave me the tools and gave me access to the people that could really help me develop and write that poem. So yeah, if we're the same, it's just same, and it's not invigorating.
Alicia, what was
Mhm.
something you learned about yourself in this process that you may not have known otherwise?
Something I learned about myself was at first it was hard. I thought it was always a hobby for me to paint. Um, and I was always really afraid to share that part of my creativity with people because it felt so personal to me. It felt like it was just my little thing. And it felt almost like just being naked and exposed in front of everybody when I originally was like, okay, yeah, I'll share all these paintings with everyone. And I realized I had the courage to actually do it. And after getting to speak with so many people after the book came out, it was nice to see how meaningful these were and that maybe this is more my purpose. Is it gave me such a feeling of I'm glad I was able to share this for you and help you like relate to it or and I think for me that changed me. That made me feel like maybe I found a purpose for me of helping people share their stories or relate to it. And yeah, I think that's what changed me was that.
And that's an interesting aspect of this book because they're not all your stories, either of you, right? You took other people's stories
Mhm.
and brought them to life through poetry and painting. So, what is it that you think allows us to have such strength and I want to say purpose for the sake of not saying purpose, but what is it that it really empowers us when we tell other people's stories, do you think?
Um, it's something that you can tell because when you're in this, when it's your story to tell, when it's your life experience that you're going through, it's hard for you to see past. I'll use the kidney donation as an example. We talked to both the donor and the recipient. And with the recipient, it was hard for them to see past this person's giving up part of their life for me. They're hurting themselves for me. And it was hard for them to be okay with that. They had a really hard time seeing past that side of it. But then hearing the story from the donor side, they were like, no, of course I would do this for you. I care about you so much. I love you. And this isn't even a question. Of course, I don't care at all that I'm doing this. I just hope that it works and I can have you in my life for longer. So seeing that other side really helped both parties understand, right? And it gave them the bigger picture, helped them see outside of it. And so I thought that was a really cool thing was helping someone see outside of their own experience, see the end of it, You have a story about abuse, seeing how it was to come out of that abuse and no, you're actually stronger than what
Mm.
you give yourself credit for. You were a very strong person and it helped them come through and be stronger for themselves. So it was cool giving people the ability to see that outside of themselves.
Mhm.
Do you have something to add there, Gwen?
No, she said that beautifully. We're hot wired for connection. We're human beings. And when you read something that tells a little bit of your story, sometimes it allows you to reflect, to think. And one of the things that I truly believe in sharing people's stories and talking with people is it helps people with healing. It's part of the process to just share and get it out. The more we share, the more we realize that other people can be understanding. Perhaps they've gone through similar experiences. shame, fear. And so that's what I'm hoping that this book does for people, is that through the sharing, it could be a personal reflection, it could be a connection, more understanding, a sense of empathy, compassion. Some of the stories that we share in this book often are not talked about. So I really wanted to give a voice to some of the stories that are brushed under the rug. You know, we don't really talk about abuse within children. Some people don't like to talk about it. Families will hush about it. So I really wanted to just give a voice to some of those experiences and to unveil them and to really say these experiences they belong to men, and we can share in them. And if we have a moment of reflection and understanding and can really start opening up about it, that's the goal, because we are hotwired for connection, authentic connection. And this is a good place to start, whether it starts a conversation with yourself, a conversation with others. That's the goal for me.
Yeah, I think you said something very powerful there, and that's authentic conversation, right? That means where we sit and we listen, and we don't spend the whole conversation trying to come up with what's our next thing to say, but we listen and we ask questions, and like you both, we choose to seek out people we trust that are worthy, right? Vulnerability is a big term a lot of days, but people got to earn your vulnerability, right? They have to be trustworthy in a place, and you can't get that in 2 minutes. That means we got to have a relationship that actually spans the test of time a little bit. And we got to slow down trying to have these relationships that are, so superficial, and there's, like you said earlier, there's so many quantity, but they're not very depth and quality.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about what you two have created is you're having conversations in depth with people that you're not even meeting, because they can sit and spend time with the poems and the artwork and reflect on what does it mean to me. And maybe they see an astronaut, maybe they see a bird flying out of the nest, right? Like they can interpret your words and your paintings to make their lives better.
That's what I like about the poetry in here is, even though it is an experience that somebody's had, it is very broad in the sense that you can make it fit to your experience. So it may not be the exact same experience for you, but it's similar enough that you can make it fit your life and you can see it for yourself. So I really liked that for the poetry.
And there's a bit of a balance there too. There's experiences of joy and enlightenment and gratitude. I have a poem called Gratitude that I absolutely love. There's poetry about courage. But yes, there is some pain, there are hard feelings there. But in life, if we go through the hard, we can really appreciate and cultivate the joy. So I try to had a little bit of a balance there. I didn't want it to be all doom and gloom. I wanted it to have highs and lows. So the reader goes on a little bit of a roller coaster with me and Alicia.
Yeah.
That's necessary though, right? Because if you think about if you pay the money to go watch a new Hollywood blockbuster, and the story is the main character has everything come easy to him throughout that 90 minutes you're watching the movie, why would you keep watching the movie, right? Like they have to have some ups and downs. There's a whole, right? Because that's where we grow. And I think it's so important that we don't. And I think that's the issue with social media, right? Is we show only our highlights, only the good things. I see all the fancy dinners you have and the clothes you have, blah, blah, but I don't see like the mental struggles you have or the fear to put out a painting, to be judged, even though you're fantastic at doing it. And I think that's the great thing about what you created and what books in general can do, is it lets people relate that everybody has struggles.
Yes.
That's right. I think you hit it on the nail there. You know, right now we create a platform in social media that is a platform of a lot of comparables, right? You know, comparing and only showing the neat and the pristine and the fancy and the nice and the pretty. But we need to show the bad and the ugly and the ups and the downs
Yeah, that's the real,
so that
right?
it creates a sense of relatability, because what we're creating right now is just comparability, and that's not real. That creates a lot of it can be very dangerous for people because they're striving for something that we think we want, but not really worth seeking.
Or doesn't even.
It's not, yeah. It's a facade for a lot of it.
Yeah. No, you two are awesome. I thank you so much for what you've put out into the world and for showing up with us this week to share your story with our community. Where can our community follow along your journey? Where can they get the book, The Canvas of Life?
It's available on Amazon. If you're in Canada, it's available on Indigo. It's also available through Friesen Press, our publisher, Friesen Press. You could follow us on Instagram, the.canvas of life, and on TikTok. Is it the Canvas of Life, Alicia?
Yeah.
The Canvas of Life. Yeah, she does all that. She does the
We're very new with all this internet stuff.
That's good. Yeah, we'll follow. I got you on Instagram already, so we'll be sure to share and tag stuff there and get you into our community as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'd love the chance to speak with you again and get to know you a little bit more. And
I appreciate you, my friends. Thanks for taking time to join us. It's an honor and a privilege to share your story, and keep believing in yourselves, keep showing up for yourself, and in turn, you're there for everybody else that you haven't even met yet. That's the amazing part.
Thank you for having us.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.